Hello, everyone. My name's Anna Lowe. I am the inclusion leader here at Braeburn for primary. So that includes early years, Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, and Key Stage 3. So welcome today to Motivation at Home, Strategies to Motivate Your Child to Learn. So what I'll be doing is we've put together this presentation for you. And what I'd like to do with this video is actually go through the presentation with you so that I can add a bit more information and just set the context a bit. Okay, so if we just take a moment to pause and consider, we've had to make a very big transition in a very short amount of time. Your children have been asked to adapt to a new way of learning that they had no prior experience with, and they had to do so at very short notice. Okay, so that was a big transition, especially for children in early years in Key Stage 1. Transitions are something that they're still learning, and even for adults, they can be tricky. So in having this transition, they've overcome huge difficulties, and they've also shown really great resilience. So it's only normal for them to feel at times unmotivated to work or learn. And I think we have to always bear that in mind. They have gone from a situation where they had their peers, and their peers were a huge part of the motivation to learn because they modeled that for each other. They had the direct interaction with the teacher, which a lot of that contact is lost in this setting as much as we can have video chats. So really, motivation is going to be an issue in this situation because of the big changes and having to adapt to this different situation where they don't have some of those, where they don't have that setting that really helped with that motivation. So the aim of this presentation is really to share practical tips and ideas to support our learners with these challenges. I'm just going to give you a brief outline of the presentation. So we'll look at first understanding motivation, really what it is. Then we'll look at the idea of goals and expectations and how that can tie into motivation, followed by routines and planning, which are another essential element in making sure that motivation happens as naturally as possible. We will look at rewards and what that entails. And then move on to learning environments, because that is a very important aspect in making sure that we create a setting that helps students learn. And finally, just touch on encouragement and involvement. So what are some of the things that we can do to encourage, and what should our involvement be in terms of at home? So I'll begin by looking at understanding what motivation is. And I think what's useful is to really look at the fact that there's really two types of motivation. So there's extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So if we think of extrinsic, well, that's a hard word to say, motivation, it's external. So you're motivated to perform an activity because you're going to earn a reward or you're going to avoid a punishment. It can be seen both ways. So either you're going to, for example, get a sticker or a trophy if you're in a sporting competition, or if the motivation to do your work is so that you don't get in trouble. Okay, so they're all external factors that influence the motivation. Then we have intrinsic motivation, which is internal. So you are motivated to perform the activity or to complete the task, to do your work, because for its own sake, because you get the personal reward, so to speak. You get that feeling of being proud, feeling accomplished for having completed the task, and just feeling good about the fact that you've done your work. You did what you were supposed to. So there are two types of motivation. What you've got here is more of it's more of a definition of each one. So it's just useful for you to have that here. But I've kind of explained this already. So it's the idea of extrinsic, external. So you get outside things that motivate you. Intrinsic is internal. It's what's inside that motivates you, who you are as a person. Let me just move that screen slightly. So if we consider extrinsic motivation, there's the bad and the good, so to speak. So the the bad side of extrinsic motivation, or a negative, I should say, um, is the over justification effect. So what that means is that if everything that the child does is the result of an external reward, so if it's the result of you giving them a sticker or giving them a prize or whatever it is, if it's entirely based on them receiving some sort of external reward, um, behavior that's already internally rewarding, so things that they would do naturally because they are rewarding and they're happy to do it, um, it can lead to a reduction in the intrinsic motivation. So what that really means is that if you constantly reward for every single thing externally, it diminishes, it lowers the intrinsic motivation. So they will not learn, or they will not continue to do things just because they then feel good about it. They're always going to be looking for that reward. So it's important to not over reward behavior. But there's also the good, the positive aspect. So extrinsic motivation, it can be useful to support a child with a task that they find difficult or they do not enjoy. So it can really be that when they're really struggling with that motivation, it can give them that extra boost. And so connected to that, it can act as a stepping stone over a hurdle. So what it can do is, if they're really struggling, it can give them that boost to continue. And once they find that they can do it, it becomes internal motivation because they see they can do it. So then they continue to do it. But they need that first step to kind of get over that block that they're having, to then see they can do it, and then continue to do it without having to have a reward. Okay, so I think that the best way to view it is, it's a question of balance. It's a question of balancing giving the external reward, that praise, the prizes, whatever it is you choose. You have to balance that out with also making sure that they, as individuals, are just motivated, which is easier said than done, I'm aware. So we're going to look at some of the ways that we can do that. So goals and expectations are key in helping children with their motivation. So being specific. So if you're clear with the expectations and what needs to be done, it really helps them organize themselves into what they need to do. So if they know, okay, the expectation is I have to do my work from this time to this time, and then I can have playtime, and I need to finish these 3 tasks before I can go on to have a break or, again, get to play. If you're specific with them and say, this is what you're doing, first this, then this, that helps them organize not only their thinking in terms of knowing what they need to do, but also helps them actually complete the tasks, because they know that there's a beginning and there's an end. Okay, I think for all of us, the hardest thing is not having the information, not knowing what's next. So if the child's given the first this, then this, that can really help them, as I say, to organize themselves. So in terms of how you can help, well, you can help them organize their day by maybe having a to-do list, helping them organize the tasks that they need to do, and also having a setup for when they can come and ask you for help. Okay, so knowing that you are there to support them, but also promoting their independence and getting them to try it first before they automatically say, I can't do it, I need your help. A way that you could do this is to sign a contract. That sounds a bit official, but basically it's that idea of really making it specific, making it explicit. You're going to write a contract with the agreements, and then you're going to sign it. And doing that can actually, you can make it fun, because what you can do is agree, okay, when it's a school day, in the morning, this is what I'll do. I'll get ready for school. Then I will do my work. Then I'll have my break. When I'm doing my work, I will always try my best. I will ask for help after I've tried. So these are just some of the ideas that you can put in the contract. And the idea of actually putting it down on paper and getting your child and you to sign it, it makes it official, but it also really helps with that idea of being specific. And in terms of making it fun, the contract does not need to be, it can be on a fun piece of paper. You can have a special pen to sign the contract. So really that thing of, oh, look, we're so grown up and we're going and signing a contract together. And then you can have it up on the fridge or wherever is easy for all of you to see it. And what's really useful is that then you can refer to it and say, remember when we agreed. So rather than always have to get into a discussion of this is why you should do your work and you have to do this now, you can just say, hey, remember we talked about this and this is what we agreed on. Another thing I should say is that it's important for your child to see that you're also agreeing to do things. So for example, if the agreement is, I will try before I ask for help, then the parent agrees to, I will give you help when you ask for it. Okay, so it has to be a two-way street for your child. It's essentially so that you can get your child's buy-in into it. Yeah, it's like we're in it together. I'm doing some things and you're doing some things. So again, you can refer to that. So you say, remember, I agreed to do this, but you agreed to do that. Okay. And then there's connected to all of that is just setting clear boundaries and saying, it's not just for it's not a one-day agreement. Whether you do it for the end of the week and then do a new one based on how you think that one went, or for the end of the term, it just depends what you think in terms of timeline. But again, it's that idea of making it specific, giving it a beginning and an end. And that can really help, because at the moment, with all the uncertainty that we have in terms of when's this reopening, when is this going back to normal, to have something that is clear and defined for them makes it a lot easier for them to handle. Because even if they're not fully aware of everything that's going on, they're very aware that their life has changed at the moment, because of just the completely new setting that they're in terms of their education. So sense of time is a challenging one, especially for younger children. So giving them something that they can see has a beginning and an end can be really helpful. Connected to that idea of beginning and end, routines and planning are key to that. So having different routines for things. At school, children are so used to having the routines, and it's the younger ones, so early years in Key Stage 1, are particularly skilled at learning and implementing routines. I find as they get older, that idea is harder for them to embrace, but really that is a skill that younger children have and that we can really tap into in terms of helping them manage and become motivated. So if we think in terms of routines, we have the work routine. So the idea of setting time limits. So I've already touched on this, is the need for a sense of finality, that there is a beginning and an end. So some children are very visual and would really benefit if you have the kitchen timer or any timer that you have on your phone, whatever it is, where they can see, okay, we're going to do the phonics task for the next 15 minutes. When that's finished, you either have a break, you move on to the other task, whatever it is in terms of what your child is able to do. And setting time limits is key to that. And I would say it's preferable to have short bursts and then perhaps a short break, rather than setting a big long time, because it's a long time to remain focused. So whether it's a 20-minute, we're going to focus, get this done, and then giving them a 5-minute break, whatever you think works best for your child. Short and often is preferable to long, drawn out periods of time sporadically. Maintain the routine for the start of the day. So it's, for example, personally, if I think for myself, in terms of getting ready for school, it's in my home, but it's important for me to have that routine where I get up, I make my breakfast, I take a moment to sit and have my breakfast, and then I come to my office, so to speak, which is the desk in my living room. But I come and I sit, and then I'm in, so to speak, work mode. So for children, it's the same, getting that routine, getting up, whatever it is in terms of your family dynamic, but getting up, having breakfast, getting ready for school. And it's that idea of getting ready for school. So changing out of pajamas, as tempting it is as it is for us to stay in pajamas because we could, sometimes they need that sort of physical change to say I'm in school mode now. Some parents have even tried, putting them in their uniforms if that's something that you think would help. I certainly remember when we had school pajama day that I found it very difficult to work because we went to school in pajamas and it just affected my mindset, and how effective I was at work. So something to think about, getting into school clothes. It doesn't have to be the uniform, of course, but just making that change can really help alter their perception. And then ensure that the materials that they need are within reach so that they have everything they need to start. So again, if I use a personal example, I have my schedule, I have my planner, I have everything within arm's reach so that when I have to answer emails, when I have to teach lessons, I also have a shelf with my teaching resources. It's all there. I can focus. And also I can't use the excuse of, need to go get something and then get distracted for 10 minutes. We all know children who love to spend ages sharpening pencils, so that they can avoid doing tasks. So if it's all there for them, they can get on with it. A help routine. So we've already talked about this idea of trying first and saying before just coming in and helping them or doing it for them, gauge their understanding. What have they understood about the task? What have they already tried to do? And then looking at, okay, well, how many questions can you try before you ask for help? So again, that idea of what have you tried first before you get onto the before you get to go ask for help. Okay, so again, building that motivation to I'm trying it first, because if the default position is I'm just going to get mom and dad to help me or whoever's at home, auntie, uncle, doesn't matter, but I'm going to get an adult to help me. It's that idea of giving too much help. Then the default position is I can just get help. I don't need to try. So really trying first. And then in order to reinforce that externally, praising that attempt and saying, okay, I'm really glad that you've tried this first. Good job for giving it a go. Let's see how we can work on it together. So in order to reinforce the fact so that they keep trying it themselves, really reinforce that by praising. Breaks routine. So also building in breaks and setting those, because you can say, when do we take breaks? So what I found helpful is to follow the school schedule. So I know that in my case, 10:20 to 10:35, that's a break moment. Okay, it's 15 minutes. Your children at their age get a little bit longer. So again, just giving them that break. Agreeing how long should the break be? Should it be when work has been finished? Or for some children, do you need to build in what we call a brain break to say, okay, halfway through the task, giving them 1 or 2 minutes, a very short amount of time to have a stretch, to get a drink of water, to get up out of their seat and move around and then come back. For some children, that can be highly effective because they learn through movement and they also need that break. So another thing you might like to try if you're finding that either they're too hyper, so to speak, their level of they're just not able to focus because they're too energetic, or if the opposite, you're finding that they're lethargic and sort of lying on the table and I don't want to do this. An exercise that you can do that works for both of those scenarios is to do what we call heavy work exercises. So it regulates your system. So it's things like getting them to push as hard as they can, like this, for 10 seconds, and then shake out, and then make sure they don't hook because they will, their fingers will their nails will dig into their fingers, making it very unpleasant. So it is like they're high-fiving themselves and then pulling, and getting them to pull for 10 seconds as hard as they can. Another one, which you can't see because of the camera, but getting them to put their hands to their sides and push up off the chair for 10 seconds. Or taking them to the wall and saying, okay, we're going to pretend we're going to move this wall, and having them full body push for 10 seconds trying to move this wall. What that does is it regulates your sensory system. So again, if you're too over energetic, if we think of a car engine, if your engine is running too high, you can then bring the engine back down to a middle, sort of a level plane. If your engine is running too low, where you're like this, it brings your engine back up to optimum level. Okay, so that's something that an analogy that you can use with your children as well. So if you talk about, well, what would happen if the engine was running too fast? Oh, you couldn't, if it was going too fast, it might hit a tree or something. And if it's running too low, it's going to take a really, really long time to get to where you want to go. So we can talk to children about getting their engine running just right. Okay. Rewards routine. So we've talked about, we're going to look at that more specifically in a moment, but rewards routine, when do we give the praise? When is that happening? Is it at the end of the task? Is it in the middle of the task? You have to gauge your child's level of motivation and see if they need some encouragement in the middle and saying, look, you've already done all this, fantastic, now keep going. And then praising at the end. And then the other important thing is follow through. If they've been promised, if they've earned rather the reward, we have to make sure that there's follow through. Just like we would with consequences to behavior, if we said you've done this and the consequence is this, and it's essential to follow through with that, because otherwise children learn that they can do what they want and will continue testing those boundaries. It's the same thing with rewards. If we've said you get this if you do this, they have to get it, and in a timely fashion, because what that does is that reinforces the idea that I can work towards this reward and then I will achieve it. Otherwise, they learn that the rewards don't mean anything. And so what you'll find is that any reward you're suggesting won't actually motivate them, because they'll say, well, what's the point? I'm not necessarily going to get it. The idea of it being in a timely fashion, so fairly immediate, is because, again, children's sense of time. And if they do something and then they get the reward but have to wait a week for it or 3 days, it loses its momentum, and it also loses that positive feedback that they're getting. They won't connect the two. If they get it right away or at the end of the day, then that really reinforces that behavior and that motivation to do it. And finally, I've already touched on this, visuals. The importance of having, does your child have a visual schedule? Can they see, okay, today it's Monday, this is what we're having to do? Do they have a to-do list? So something, again, personally, I love a to-do list. And what I find most satisfying in a to-do list is just to cross things off. So for your child, that could also be very motivating. So whether you have a whiteboard where you write out the day's tasks, and then as they're completing them, they erase them so they can see the task list getting smaller, which again is motivating, because you're seeing that you're accomplishing, and it motivates you to continue because you can see that you're getting it done. Or simply on a piece of paper, and then maybe they have a special crossing out pen where the most satisfying, really cross it out and say, oh, I've done that, or give it a big tick. And perhaps just having a special pen that's their to-do pen could also, a simple thing, but could be very motivating. When we talk about rewards, we want to think about small rewards and big rewards. So here you've got a list of possibilities, but again, the possibilities are endless, and you also know your child best, so you will know what a true reward looks like for them. I think it's, again, important to balance small rewards and big rewards. So for example, a small reward is, depending on how much they're struggling to motivate right now to do tasks, maybe it's just for completing an activity, they get a small reward. Or if your child is managing to accomplish more, maybe for every 2 tasks, they get a small reward. What you can also do is, once they're being successful with, say they have to start at doing 1 task, 1 reward. Then as they're being successful with that, you present it in a positive way and say, look, you're doing so well with this. I'm going to challenge you because I know you can do more. So then say for every 2 tasks, you give them a small reward. And again, it's building in that challenge, it's building in that motivation, and it's also building in that self-belief of I can do it. So initially make sure that they're successful with that first step, but then take them to that next step because they can do it. And then big rewards can be maybe at the end of the week. Look at, if you've done 2, 3 tasks a day, you get the big reward. But again, it has to be consistent and it has to be delivered. Otherwise, it loses its impact. Then learning environment, that's also key. So I've already touched on this, in fact, in this idea of having a space where I consider it my office and I come and work. It's the same thing for students. So if you set it up in a way that supports them, it will influence how they feel, act, and behave. So learning at home can be very rewarding, but it needs to be an environment that fosters that learning. So some ideas is making a special school space. So saying, this is your, for example, I've worked with students where I've said, this is your office. And they love that idea because mom and dad sometimes go to the office. So why not have their own office? And they could even put a little sign and, so-and-so's office. Or their so-and-so's special learning desk or whatever it is. Now, of course, depending on your family setup and the constraints of space, it may not be something that can be permanent, but that can be built into the routine of the morning of saying, now it's time for school, let's set up your office. And it can be an office that then needs to be tidied up because of space constraints. That's absolutely fine. It's again building that routine of saying, now we've set up your office, or we've set up your school space, come and learn. Making the space comfortable. So important whenever possible for children that when children are doing writing tasks, their legs should be their feet should touch the floor so that they're sitting effectively with their legs at a 90-degree angle. What that does is it immediately improves their posture, and it also helps with the writing. In addition to that, so if they have a chair and a desk that are suited to that, fantastic. If not, what you can do is put something under their legs so that it helps them, so that their feet are touching something. It can be a bucket, it can be a stack of books. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just something that helps them, because again, that will just improve their posture and their writing. And making it tidy. If there's too many things on there, they will get distracted. If it's a space that there's a lot of noise, that there's a loud TV going on in the background or loud music, it will make it very difficult for them to focus. So a space that can be, as I say, comfortable and tidy, and making the space fun. So perhaps having their own special pencil pot where they have their special supplies, where they decorate that pot, having their own special pens that are theirs for school, or keeping them in their own special pencil case. Just something that that helps them with feeling a sense of, just like they would at school, they go to their backpack, they get their pencil case, they're ready to start the day. They can have it on their desk. Yeah. So this idea of just making it specific, we've talked about that before. And also not forgetting to get out of the classroom. So differentiating that space and saying, okay, time to leave your classroom, time to leave your office, let's go and have a break. And so that the break is not at that same space. So I know I keep giving examples of myself, but again, I can relate to that. I need to, when it's a break time, I don't sit in front of my computer. I go somewhere else. So that idea of creating that differentiation of space. And finally, having the idea of encouragement and your involvement. So love and connection, that's something that you do constantly with your children. And with learning, how that manifests in this home learning environment is asking them questions that show interest in what they're doing. in how they've completed a task, or asking them what they found tricky, but also what they found easy. Sometimes something I like to do as a check-in with my students is I say, okay, was the task like this, or like this? Something as simple as that. Or draw me a face to show me how you felt about this work. Connecting to what they're doing and connecting to how they're finding that work. Also helping them make connections to other learning. So if you see that they've done something to do with math and it connects to something they're doing in topic, help them to make that link. The reason for that is that it helps to make learning more meaningful and also more lasting, so that the skills that they're building, they can then transfer to other settings. So connections, again, are important. And finally, being their cheerleader, which you already are, but just having that person that says, I know this is tricky, but I'm so impressed by the fact that you're doing it, and I want you to keep going because it's important. And another thing connected to that is language. The language we use with children is very important. So making sure that there's authentic praise. What I mean by that is instead of just saying good job, which can be interpreted, it gets to a point where children are just don't hear it anymore. So saying, I really like how you did this, being specific and authentic about the praise, and saying, this was really good. And it was good because I think children hear the words good job or good girl, good boy so often that it doesn't even register in their brain necessarily as a compliment or as praise. And also it's not specific enough. So they don't actually know what it is that they've done well. And if they are told what it is they're doing well, they're more likely to repeat it. They're more likely to do it again. So we have to be specific and say, I really like how you did this, because then they know to do that again. Similarly, labeling the behavior, not the person. So again, if your child is being challenging in terms of their behavior, to really say, okay, right now you are behaving in this way. Instead of saying you are being annoying, which as siblings, we've all said to each other, what you are doing is annoying, or what you are doing is not okay. I think it helps them separate themselves from seeing it as them being bad. But it also gives them that feedback that what they're doing is not acceptable and that they need to change it. Finally, the power of perseverance and positive thinking is connected to things like using phrases where, no, I'm so sorry about that. Someone tried to call and it's for some reason went through my computer. When your child says, I don't know, immediately jumping in and say, I don't know yet. And it's that idea of, if you say, I don't know, I can't, what I explain it to students as is they're freezing their brain. They're just creating an immediate block in their brain, which makes it very difficult to then move on from that. Whereas if you say, I don't know yet, you're admitting you don't know, and you're admitting that's okay. That's fine. It's okay not to know something, because I don't know it yet. I'm going to know it. And it might sound like a very small thing, but it can make all the difference in terms of a child's willingness to persevere and be motivated to continue. So similarly, I can't do it yet, or I don't know could be changed to I am learning to. So again, it might sound a bit not that important, but it is. It's that changing of that. In changing the language, you're changing the mindset. So you're changing that level of engagement and you're changing the motivation. And that's about it. Thank you for watching. I really hope you found this useful. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions. We're here to not only support your children, but support you, because we appreciate that you've been doing a lot to really support their learning. You've been an essential partner for us in this situation. And as I've said, we're here to support you too. Thank you very much.